As strange as it sounds, Frieza is the most sympathetic character I know. He truly never had a chance to be anything else. Until Goku. When you have no peers, no one who would dare disagree with you, no actual challenges, never having to negotiate with anyone for anything, when you're smarter than everyone else, and you never have to fear for your safety, you will become a monster. Frieza was denied every chance to develop properly. There was nothing else he could become. This was something that was done to him. That's a little dark. Let's talk about cats. Specifically, my ex-girlfriend's cat. She treated that cat like a baby instead of a cat. Hugging, kissy face, all the stuff that cats actually hate. But due to conditioning since kittenhood, the cat would just go into submission. The cat would never seek her out, aside from food. See, I love cats, and animals in general. I really like playing with cats. And for the record, using a laser pointer is not playing with your cat, it's screwing with your cat. Play requires interaction. With a laser pointer, they typically don't know that you're involved. This cat did not know how to play. She was super curious about me, but being denied access to other animals and healthy humans, she would get overstimulated very easily, start making scary noises, but still stay interested in me, or more accurately, play. Kind of like this cat. It wants to be near the humans. It has literally put itself in the middle of a footpath. You can almost see the switch from hopeful to violent when bodies would approach it too closely or too quickly, causing a fear reaction. My ex's cat would sit atop a scratching post. You had to request permission to touch her by reaching partway towards her and waiting. If she dipped her head and closed her eyes for a second, you were good. If you didn't get permission, she'd mess you up. The best way to destroy a person or a cat is to deny them the environment they need to develop. Just like plants need moisture and sunlight, we need to play to properly develop ourselves. Frieza's desire for play manifested in the only way it could in the environment in which he found himself, as sadism, his twisted version of the invitation to play. We also need challenges to develop. The only challenge on offer for Frieza was conquest. It's hard to fault a person who never had a choice, trying to find meaning in the only way they know how. I'm sure you can think of a near endless list of characters that evoke more sympathy than Frieza, but I'd argue at least those characters got to develop. Losing something that Frieza never even had seems less sympathetic, at least to me. His fight with Goku was the most healthy experience of his life. Developed properly, we need failures. A lot of them. We also need examples. Examples of the different ways of being. The wider range of peers we have to draw upon, the better. As an example, Goku isn't afraid to be vulnerable. He's constantly being berated for dropping his guard, but that's just a metaphor for the vulnerability that comes with trusting others. This is what he's teaching Frieza. Not by telling him, but by actually being vulnerable. Frieza's like the cat. He's drawn to Goku by conflicting forces within. The healthy part wanting to play with Goku, and the other wanting to avoid the pain of growth by redirecting self-hate onto Goku and destroying him. These are both in play in Frieza, and Frieza oscillates between them. The new environment of help us win or we get wiped from existence was a game changer. The barrier between Frieza's self-interest and the interest of others was weakened. He couldn't act in his own interest without also acting in the interests of others. The part of him that doesn't want to change tries to create situations where he could divest his interest from those of his universe, but luckily those attempts fail, if they were real attempts at all. I use the elephant and rider analogy often because it's a really simple tool with a lot of utility. Jonathan Haidt explains it as, our emotional side is the elephant, and our rational side is the rider. The rider holds the reins and seems to be the leader, but the rider's control is precarious because the rider is so small relative to the elephant. Anytime the 6-ton elephant and the rider disagree about which direction to go, the rider is going to lose. He's completely overmatched. In Frieza's case, the rider is very attached to his current identity as a villain, but his elephant wants to change, to be more like Goku. Whenever Frieza engages in a benevolent act, he is compelled to do it in a context that doesn't conflict with his identity, like saving a teammate by kicking him. The very odd thing about this is it's the inverse of this behavior that's really common, where a person's rider tries to smooth things over because of the selfishness or malevolence of the elephant. We have many examples of this in the Tournament of Power. For the first time in his life, Frieza exists in a group of peers. He seems to spend most of the tournament just watching others, becoming more aware of the different ways that people conduct themselves. From here on out, I'm going to go through Frieza's psychological transformation to someone who can trust. This transcendent vulnerability is apparent in how they animate his transformation after arriving on Earth. This pose didn't start with Jesus. Also note that while still in Hell, he assumed the more classic power-up pose. The idea of Frieza wanting to shake hands and hug Goku sounds absolutely insane. But Frieza figured out how he could accomplish something similar within the context of his evil identity, and they both seem to be very happy to see each other. Killing people is part of the identity Frieza is still attached to, and when an opportunity to act this out emerges, he does so gleefully. He also, as strange as it sounds, wants Goku's approval. I don't think Frieza actually believed that Goku would be killed by the destruction energy, and seeing that Goku was rescued before powering up kind of implies that. Frieza's call to the deities to make a deal for his own survival was really just a game he was playing with himself. In his current state, there's no way he'd trust them to hold up their end of the deal if he followed through. Frieza wanted to assert some control over his situation, and he wanted to play the role of villain. Considering his sabotage development, this is a Herculean effort of self-control on his part. Luckily, Frieza realized that Vegeta was even more uncomfortable than he was. This opened up a context where Frieza could act out agreeable behavior, but under the pretext that it was enraging Vegeta. Keep in mind, whenever Frieza speaks, he's actually trying to bolster his own identity as a villain. He's mostly just trying to convince himself. He immediately finds some weak opponents to act out the role of villain on, but quickly bores of this, and implies that he hasn't actually had any fun yet, and should find his next playmate. Playmate, not plaything. So, who is his next playmate, and what game will he play? Well, it's a game called Rescuing Gohan, but in the most villainous context he can muster. By his own admission, torturing weaker opponents wasn't fun. He's trying something new. Vegeta's discomfort at an agreeable Frieza built the foundation for a way to Frieza to delude himself into believing that he's being evil, while acting out benevolence. Frieza saves Gohan a second time in the same encounter, again using the flimsy "my hand slipped" excuse. I'd guess that it's pretty obvious to most people that Frost represents Frieza's evil side. Frost is essentially Frieza, without Goku's intervention. I think it's safe to assume that Frieza has been watching Frost and how he conducts himself. Having Frost allows Frieza to externalize the parts of himself he needs to eliminate. Executing a part of yourself is not uncommon in good stories. In the movie Falling Down, which I streamed an analysis of, Michael Douglas's character, while committing his first murder, catches his own reflection in the mirror and pseudo-executes himself. Of course, he was on the opposite trajectory, but it's the same metaphorical action.
You should never trust anyone, ever.
Again, with Frieza, you need to ignore the words and look solely at the effects of his actions. He saved Gohan, twice, worked cooperatively with Gohan to get Frost to drop his guard, and managed to not only kill his weaker self, but get him wiped from existence, the only actual casualty of the entire Tournament of Power. He also unequivocally states, "This was fun," clearly implying that torturing weaker opponents just doesn't do it for him anymore. The next time we see Frieza, he's freely giving his energy to Goku, citing, "It's a new day." After his first encounter with Jiren, Goku is completely spent. He can't even move. Frieza sought him out to aid him, but again has to do it in the most villainous context he can manage. The fact that Frieza would care at all about paying back debts is a subtle but significant change. It's very important to remember that a change in behavior, no matter what story you are telling yourself, will lead to a change in personality. I think the fight with Kaba was Frieza's evil identity, not coping well with helping Goku, trying to recreate his fight with Goku with Kaba. He got no enjoyment from this and eliminated him almost respectfully. He then seeks Goku out and feigns a minor disagreement. In a way, confrontations with Goku are comforting for Frieza during this transition. Something familiar, someone trustworthy. It's kind of funny how Goku just gets what Frieza is going through and takes no offense to being saved by a swift kick, whereas everyone else can't see through the facade of evil that Frieza has to maintain. Frieza wants to help, to be part of the team, but he needs a context in which to justify this benevolence. Feigned outrage over being attacked is kind of weak, but that's because the barrier preventing Frieza from trusting others has been weakened by healthy play, cooperation, and the mock execution of his weaker self. Frieza has no intention of making a deal with Dispo. He's testing the morality of his current playmate. He's never had a group of peers to observe like this. Gohan didn't think twice before coming to Frieza's rescue. Disregarding his words, this was very meaningful to Frieza. Frieza actually suggests working together. Gohan sacrificing himself for the team is foreshadowing Frieza's ascension to a person that can trust. Frieza then comes to the aid of 17, but as usual, he has to do it in the most villainous context he can manage. What was unusual is how he gave 17 an indirect compliment. I think witnessing the contrast between 17 and Top was very elucidating for Frieza. They're almost opposite. 17 does the right things, but has no interest in moralizing. Top, like most of the Pride Troopers, are putting on a performance, mostly for themselves. Top makes it very clear that his platitudes have all been phony, when he denounces his entire belief system to become a destroyer. In action, Frieza is now a team player. He has rescued teammates several times and has very effectively cooperated with several team members. Frieza's first brush with selflessness, of course, had to be in the context of murderous intent. Even Jiren sees the change in Frieza, which Frieza has to immediately dispute while projecting his own shortcomings onto Jiren. He pretends to take offense to 17's help, but then lends him an unmitigated compliment. And in this moment of vulnerability, 17 professes his trust in him. Frieza pretends that he doesn't care, but trust from someone like 17 can't be dismissed so easily. While the main story is considered to be Goku breaking through his barriers, the bigger story, at least in my mind, is Frieza breaking through his barriers. Not a new form or power level, but the ability to form relationships and work towards common goals.
The power of